Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. Inshallah, today we'll be moving on to the final section or the final fasl regarding the ism. So within ma'rifa, nakira, asma'ul adad, mudhakkar, mu'annas, muthanna, jumu', masdar, ism al-fa'il, ism al-maf'ul, as-sifat al-mushabbaha, and now we're finishing off with ism al-tafdhil. Now ism al-tafdhil, we all know from English, is a comparison. So faslun ismu tafdhil ismun mushtaqun min fa'lin. Simple. Liyadulla, to denote a mawsuf. So it gives a meaning of a description. But this differentiates from a normal sifa, a normal naat, that it shows liyadulla ala al-mawsufi bi ziyadatin ala ghayri. In comparison, it has whatever the root meaning is, the root meaning with more meaning. So it denotes the mawsuf with bi ziyadatin ala ghayrihi, with increase above or more than what it already has. Okay, so for example, sighatuhu. So that's very simple, the definition of ism tafdhil. Sigha is usually af'al. Okay, فلا يبنى إلا من الثلاثي المجرد الذي ليس بلون ولا عيب. So you get af'al, but the af'al only comes from thulathi mujarrad. It only comes from thulathi mujarrad, which is neither color nor aib. So for example, kabir, to be big, so you can have akbar. Saghura, to be small, you can have asghar. To know, a'lam. Yes? Correct? But the root meaning cannot be color or it cannot be a bodily defect, because the sifatun mushabbaha of lawn and aib come on af'al. So for example, what is blind? Blind means, the word for blind is, the word for that is a'ma. The word for deaf is asam. A'ma, asam, abkam. So bodily defects, a'raj, these are all Quranic words. So this, the normal, so a'raj doesn't mean more handicap or more crippled or more blind. These af'al pattern for colors, even for colors, abyad, aswad, ahmar. So these are adjective meanings without tafdhil. So a color or an aib, bodily defect, the af'al pattern does not show a ziyada or comparison. It shows simple adjective meaning. But an af'al pattern out of these two meanings denotes ziyada and tafdhil. Does everybody understand that? Yes? Yes. However, to know, this is only this is what the Ahlul Basra say. Ahlul Kufa, they differ, and they say no, you can't have it from colors. And the dalil is in the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he describes Kawthar, and he says, ma'uhu abyadu min al-laban. He says here, abyadu min al-laban. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has used the word abyad min al-laban. Okay? So, well, if this is the exact word of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so obviously hadith can be paraphrased. So the words that has reached as abyadu min al-laban. So based on this, they have said it is permissible. And Ahlul Basra said no, it's not. It shouldn't be used. And this is either it's paraphrased, or this is an example which is used, but it is not the better option. It's marjuh. Okay, so abyadu min al-laban has come in a hadith. But generally speaking, you don't have lawn on aib and the pattern of af'al to show tafdhil meaning. The af'al, this denotes the adjective meaning. For example, Zaydun afdalun nas. But so what if you want to show a tafdhil meaning, a comparative meaning of a color or a fault or something which is thulathi? What do? You would say ashaddu or aqwa or akbahu or aktharu. You would bring one of these, ism tafdhil, a general ism tafdhil, then you would bring the thing you're comparing as a tamyiz. And sometimes this structure comes even though it is a thulathi. For example, what comes in the Quran? Ana aktharu minka malan wa aktharu minka malan. So it says akthar. So ana akthar. You could have said ana amwalu minka in theory. So this structure of bringing a general ism tafdhil followed by a tamyiz has to be used for anything more than 3 letters, or which is a color or a fault or a defect, bodily defect. But it is also used in other ways. Ashaddu hubban lillah. You can say ahabbu lillah. But you can also say ashaddu hubban. So this ashaddu, aqwa, aktharu, ashaddu, they can be used. They have to be used for these three. 1, 2, 3. If the root meaning is more than 3 letters, or it is a color or a bodily defect. Do you understand? Are you following? So this is what he says here. He explains it. So yajibu an yubna af'ala min thulathiyin mujarradin. It is necessary to do what? Yubna af'ala min thulathi. You make an af'al from a thulathi. So you make like ashaddu or aqwa or akthar or aqbahu. So you make an af'al from the thulathi pattern, which can denote liyadulla ala mubalaghatin wa shiddatin wa kathra, which was mubalagha or shidda or kathra, abundance or severity. Then ثم يذكر بعده مصدر ذلك الفعل منصوبا على التمييز. Then you can mention after that the masdar of that verb in a mansoob state because it's tamyiz. So for example, what's what happened here? If I want to say he's better able to derive masail, so istikhraj, to derive. So you say huwa ashaddu istikhraja. You can't say astakhraja ya akhraja. You have to say ashaddu, a general ism tafdil followed by the meaning you wish to give as a tamyiz. So ashaddu istikhrajan. It is more red, aqwa khumratan. Because red is a color. You can't say ahmaru min, because ahmar itself is an adjective. So you say aqwa humratan, ashaddu humratan, ashaddu bayadan. Aqbahu arajan, he has a worse limp than fulan. Understood? Yes? Any questions regarding this so far? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. You could say ab'asu. In theory, you could say ab'asu. So the question is, ashaddu ba'san wa ashaddu tankila. So for a tankil, bab taf'il is za'idan ala thulathi. So you have to say ashaddu tankila. You can't say ankalu. But for ba'san, in theory, you could say ab'asu. But you can also say ashaddu. So what I'm saying is, these are wajib. But this structure can also be used for thulathi. Like aktharu malan, ashaddu ba'san. So this structure can also be used. This ashaddu, aktharu can also be used for thulathi, but it is optional. But this for thulathi and lawn and aib, it has to be used as with this structure. Any other examples you can think of from the Quran? Aktharu, ashaddu. So aktharu malan comes, aktharu walada. Okay? Any other questions? Azzu nafar. Yeah. I think what happens is, azzu nafara. So in here, if you look at mal, walad, these are mushtaq, these are jamid. These are not masadir. So you can't derive mal, or you can have amwal, I guess. So when it's a jamid, so he hasn't mentioned jamid, but when it's a jamid, all of these, azzu nafara, aktharu malan wa walada, these are jamid. Even in jamid, these are used. So these are not mushtaq. So if it's a mushtaq, you can say aktharu. In theory, be ab'asu if you want to say ba'usa yab'usu, to be brave. Okay? That's coming up. How do you use it is coming up shortly. Okay? وَقِيَاسُهُ أَن يَكُونَ لِلْفَاعِلِ كَمَا مَرَّ. The meaning consisted or built into the ism tafdil is a fa'il meaning. What does that mean? Like if I say aktharu, if I say for example akbaru, ya adrabu, then it means that he is the one who does the darb more. Ansaru, he is the one who does the nasr and the helping more. So the fa'ili element is compared. Ansaru. Asma'u, he listens more. Do you understand? So the fa'ili meaning, the subject meaning, that is the ghalib meaning in this. Kama marra. وَقَدْ جَاءَ لِلْمَفْعُولِ قَلِيلًا. Sometimes you can have the ism tafdil, but the meaning that is depicted and shown is the maf'ul element. So adhara ya'dhuru is to excuse somebody. So the adhir. So a'dharu doesn't mean the one who accepts more the excuses of people. It means the one who has many excuses, who's many a time he is excused. Ashghal is to occupy. So ashghal doesn't mean he occupies a lot. It means what? He's much occupied. The tafdil is in a maf'ul element. Shahara is to make something famous. So shahara later means to shahara saif is to draw a sword. When you draw a sword, you make it public, you make it famous. That's where the made famous comes from. Ashhar doesn't mean the one who makes famous, the one who has been made famous. So ashhar in these, so for example, in ansar. The comparative meaning is in a fa'il aspect. He helps more. If you say ashhar, he has been made more famous. So in these examples, the maf'ul meaning is being compared. Do you understand? But generally speaking, the fa'il meaning is the meaning that we look into. Understood? Yes? Any other questions? Okay, now this is very important. Make sure you pay attention properly and get this one properly. It's very, very important. How do we use ism tafdhil? Ism tafdhil can be used in three ways. Ism tafdhil can be used in three ways. The first is mudaf. Yes? So the ism tafdhil becomes mudaf. The thing you're comparing it to becomes the mudaf ilay. Got it? Now this mudaf ilay can be either nakira or it can be ma'rifah. Correct? Now, when the mudaf ilay is nakira, now it is necessary for you to keep the ism tafdhil as af'alu, because af'alu, it has a tasrif, because all of these mushtaqat have a tasrif. Af'alu, af'alani, af'aluna, afa'ilu, fu'la, fu'layani, fu'layatun, fu'alun. It has a mudhakkar, mu'annas, jama', mufrad, mudhakkar forms. So, but when you have it mudhaf to a nakira, you have to say mufrad and mudhakkar. So there's a Quranic example. وَلَا تَكُونُوا أَوَّلَ كَافِرٍ بِهِ. So do not become the first disbelievers in it. So awwal, so the takun is referring to whom or antum. The waw zamir in here is plural. But you don't say awwalu, awwalani, awwaluna, and you say awwalu kafirin. Because the mudhaf ilay is nakira, you have to make it mufrad, like kafir. You can't say awwal, oh sorry, you have to say awwal. You can't say awwaluna and then drop the noon for idafa. You can't say awwalu kafirin. It has to be mufrad and it has to be mudhakkar. Okay? So for example, if you were talking about a lady, you would say for example, let me use a different color. You say for example, Khadijatu afdalu imra'atin. There's ikhtilaf in this anyways, but afdalu imra'atin fi dunya. Afdalu imra'atin fi dunya. So because, how is ism tafdhil being used? What's the structure of afdalu imra'atin? What's it? So mudaf ilay. The mudaf ilay is in what form? Mufrad? No. The mudaf ilay is what? Nakira. So therefore, afdal has to be singular and masculine. You wouldn't say kubra mara'atin. Yes? So if the mudaf ilay is nakira, the ism tafdhil stays as mufrad and mudhakkar. Mufrad and mudhakkar. So in this example, it says mudhakkar. This example, it says mufrad. You got the first form? If it's mudaf to a ma'rifah, you can do it two ways. Can you read the white text or is it hard to see on the screen?
I want to say someone did something. I want to say it to you.
Yeah. So it can be mufrad or mudhakkar like this. For example, وَلَا تَجِدَنَّهُمْ. So whom is jama' and the ahrasanna. So the ahras is mufrad and mudhakkar even though the thing is referring to is jama'. So you can keep it mufrad mudhakkar. And you can also do mutabaqah. Make it match in number and gender. So whum aradhiluna. Radhil to be low in character and moral. So ardhal, ardhalani, ardhaluna, aradhilu. Rudhla, rudhlayani, rudhlayatun, rudhalun. So aradhil is a plural of ardhal. Ardhal. So hum aradhiluna. Because it's mudhaf and the mudhaf ilay is ma'rifah, you have a choice. So in this example, it stays mufrad and mudhakkar. This example, it becomes jama'. And for example, if you had a so for example, you can say here, you say for example, how would you say Khadija? Khadijatu. If you make nisa mu'annas, you say Khadijatu afdalun nisa'i. Or you can also say Khadijatu. It's very rare, but you can say Khadijatu. What is it? Mu'annas. Fudlan nisa'i. But it's rare. But you can say that as well because the mudhaf ilay is ma'rifah. So therefore you can make it match. So fudla matches with this. And here you also have the choice of not matching and making it mudhakkaran mufrad. Understood? Yes, but that's because Khadija is mufrad. So for example, we could say for example, as-sahabiyatu, ya azwajun nabi, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will be what? Fudlayani, fudlayatun. So fudlayatun nisa. So now it matches in number and gender change because the mudhaf ilayhi is mu'arraf billah ma'rifa. Understood? When it's mudhaf to ma'rifa, you have the choice. One is keep it standard, and the second is make it mutabaqa, make it match. So for example, this example, la tajidannahum ahrasan nas, this stays mufrad even though you're talking about whom. And this example you're talking about whom, so ardhal becomes aradil. In here Khadija, afdal, you keep it mufrad, and Khadija fudla, it changes gender to match Khadija. And fudlayat in nisa changes to match azwaj in number and gender. Yes? Okay? Okay, I can't hear you. Can you please come a bit closer to the mic or speak a bit loudly? Oh, you mean nakira mahdha and ghayr mahdha? They haven't mentioned it, so I would assume it would apply to all of them. Nakira mahdha and ghayr mahdha. I would assume it apply to all of them. But I'm not 100%, but assumption. Okay. Yes, should we go ahead? Okay. If the mudhaf, the next way we can use it is as a nat. So the ism tafdil becomes a nat. So there, because it's becoming a nat, man would not have to match. So for example, yasla nar al-kubra. So it has to match because nar is what? This is maf'ul, this is maf'ulun bihi or maf'ulun fih. And then this becomes man'ut, and nar is man'ut, and this becomes a nat. So then it has to match. There's no two ways about it. Yasla nar al-kubra. Akbar, akbarani, akbaruna, akabiru, kubra. So an-nar al-kubra, ayati rabbikal, no, ayatihi al-kubra. So kubra has to match because it's a nat. So when it's mu'arraf bil-lam, it becomes a nat. So therefore it has to match. You have to have mutabaqa. It must match in number and gender. Yes? Correct? And the third scenario is where you min. And in this case, you have to bring it mufrad and you have to bring it. Here's my example here. You have to bring it mufrad and mudhakkar. Okay? Can you think of an example in the Quran? وَلَأَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَشَدُّ وَأَبْقَى. But that matters anyways. Is there any example with a mu'annas? Let's make our own example. For example, you say Khadijatu akbaru min Fatima. You won't say kubra min Fatima. When it's min, you have to say mufrad mudhakkar. Correct? Yes? Yes? And al-ummahatu a'lamu. You can't say a'lamu, a'lamani, a'lamuna, a'alimu, ulma, ulmayani, ulmayatun. So a'lamu min al-banat. You can't change this. It has to say singular. Okay? So if you work backwards, it's easier. When it's min, you have to have it as mufrad mudhakkar. When it's mu'arraf bil lam, the ism tafdhil, it becomes a nat. So nat has to match in number and gender. When it's mudhaf, this is where you have to look. If it's mudhaf to a nakira or mudhaf to a ma'rifa. If it's mudhaf to a nakira, it must be mufrad mudhakkar. And if it's mudhaf to ma'rifa, you have a choice. Understood? Yes, comparatively.
Page 11.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you have ayat, remember if you have a plural like ayat, if you say bayyinatun, that would refer to takthir, and bayyinat would refer to taqleel. So jama usually, if you have a jama sifa, it refers to jam'ul qilla. So ayatun bayyinat, they would refer to qilla, and ayatun bayyina would be kathra. It's opposite. generally as a rule of thumb. So ayat rabbihil kubra. So ayat is kathra, because of kubra is mufrad. If it was qilla, it would be kubrayat. It would have been in theory if it's not for other reasons such as wazn or saja, etc. Yes, not only for ism tafdeel. The general rule is when you have a nat, which is the man'oot is ghayr aqil. You have a choice, but in nahwa we say you got choice. But Ahlul Ma'ani have said that if you have the nat of a ghayr aqil as mufrad, it usually implies that it's kathra. The man'oot is kathir, jam'ul kathra. And if you have a jama' nat, it implies that the man'oot is jam'ul qilla, usually as a rule of thumb. Okay? So ayatun bayyina would mean the ayat is kathir. And ayatun bayyinat would imply that the ayat are qalil, as a general rule of thumb. And you can apply that to the different verses you see, inshallah. Okay? In terms of translation, this is basically this is a nat. So, for example, the biggest. It's like a nat. This is comparison, and this is superlative. So, for example, if I say Khadija akbaru min Fatima is bigger, it's comparison, and akbarun nisa, afdalun nisa is superlative, the greatest of the women, the best of the women, most virtuous of the women. And the alif lam, it just shows a nat by itself. Are you following? Okay. He explains this in the text, but he doesn't discuss the ma'rifah, nakira forms in mudhaf, mudhaf ilayh. So he says, istimaluhu, it can be used in three ways. Imma mudhafan ka zaydun afdalul qawm. It can be used mudhaf, for example, zaydun afdalul qawm. Now miss a few lines out, and the rule of that is what? When you have a mudhaf, وَيَجُوزُ فِي الْأَوَّلِ, which is this one, الْإِفْرَادُ وَمُطَابَقَةُ اسْمِ تَفْضِيل. He says you can do ifrad and mutabaqa. He didn't mention the ma'rifah and nakira difference. This is mentioned in Qatr al-Nada. Okay, he says, نَحْوُ زَيْدٌ أَفْضَلُ الْقَوْمِ. So you can have here, أَفْضَلُ الْقَوْمِ. So this is not an issue here. وَالزَّيْدَانِ أَفْضَلُ الْقَوْمِ وَأَفْضَلَاءَ الْقَوْمِ. Ifrad and mutabaqa. وَالزَّيْدُونَ أَفْضَلُ الْقَوْمِ وَأَفْضَلُوا الْقَوْمِ. So you can do this one, and we explained the table before. أو معرفا بالله نحو زيد الأفضل. So in this scenario, وفي الثاني يجب المطابقة, because what is it? It's what? Not. So it has to match. وفي الثاني يجب المطابقة نحو زيد الأفضل والزيدان الأفضلان والزيدون الأفضلون. أو بمين, if you use the harf jar of min, نحو زيد أفضل من أمر. So three ways of using it, and in this way, وفي الثالث يجب كونه مفردا مذكرا أبدا. It has to be مفردا مذكر. زيد وهند والزيدان والهندان والزيدون والهندات. All of them will be أفضل من أمر, not أفضل أفضلان. It will remain the same in all scenarios. Are you following me so far? Yes? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. So continuing and finishing off from yesterday, we're discussing the ism tafdeel. And we mentioned the three ways the ism tafdeel can be used. Whether it's mudhaf, mudhaf ilayh, whether it's with an alif lam as a nat, or whether it's used with min. So what he's saying here is that in all three scenarios, however you use it, in all three scenarios, the fa'il, it becomes mudhmar. The fa'il is hidden inside of it. So it will always have a fa'il inside. وَهُوَ. So for example, if you go back to the previous slide, if I say, for example, if it's mudhaf, so Zaydun afdalul qawm, we say here in afdal there is going to be a pronoun. If you use it as mu'arrafun billam, in afdal there is going to be a pronoun. If you use it with min in here, in all of these scenarios is going to be a pronoun huwa. And if you use it, for example, mutabaqa, to afdala al-qawm, we say the huma is hidden inside and alif is alamatu tasniya. As-zaydun, the hum is hidden inside, waw is alamatul jam. So whichever form you use, there is going to be a hidden pronoun inside of the ism tafdeel. And the ism tafdeel huwa, the ism tafdeel, ya'malu fi dhalika al-mudhmar. It does amal, it makes that dhamir marfu'. وَلَا يَعْمَلُ فِي الْمُظْهَرِ أَصْلًا. You don't get an ism tafdeel, you don't get an ism tafdeel with a marfu' fa'il after it. The fa'il always has to be inside. Understood? Everybody following? Yes? So for example, you can't say أفضل أمر min Zaydin. So we can't say, for example, here now, Amr is the fa'il of Afdal, because Afdal is not allowed to have an ism al-zahir as its fa'il. You have to say Amrun Afdalu min Zaydin. So you can't have a fa'il after it. Understand? When it's mudhar. When you say Amrun afdalu min Zaydin. And in this case, there will be a pronoun huwa inside, and afdal will make the amil of that zamir mustatir. But it cannot do amal, it cannot have a marfu fa'il which is zahir, mudhar. Understood? Okay. إلا في مثل قولهم ما رأيت رجلا أحسن في عينه الكهل منه في عين زيد, except in one example. So just give me one example, a mustasna. But generally speaking, so this is the general rule, and one mustasna where we do find in Arabic poetry, there's an Arabic thing. So this example, we do find that the ism al-tafdil has the fa'il, but because it is a one-off, we say only in this mas'ala, you don't see anywhere else. And if then فَإِنَّ الْكُهْلَ فَاعِلٌ. So for example here, I'll explain it shortly. So basically we have ahsana, and al-kuhlu is the fa'il of ahsana. So here, it just contradicts the rule we mentioned above. So we say, this is one exemption. It's called mas'alatul kuhli. And we mentioned this briefly in Awamil al-Briqwi. And I'll explain it again shortly here again. So it says, al-kuhl is the fa'il of ahsan. And here there's a discussion. So he decided not to discuss this. And he decided the things which he chose to discuss and leave out is very interesting. What is this mas'ala? The mas'ala is this. If you have ma ra'aytu rajulan ahsana fi aynihi al-kuhlu minhu fi ayni Zayd. So first of all, the dhabita, for this rule you have to have a nafi. This can only occur in kalam ghayr mujab. So for example, we have a nafi here. Yes, what do we have first of all? A nafi. So if we have a situation where we have a nafi, then it's possible this mas'ala can occur. Second condition, you must have an ismu jins after it. Like this. You must have an ismu jins. Thereafter, you must have a which is the ismu jins becomes a mawsuf. So the ismu jins and the ismu jins become mawsuf. And what's the sifa? Bismi tafdil. The ismu tafdil becomes the sifa or the naat, whatever you want to call it. Becomes the sifa or the naat. Yes? And after that, the ismun mufaddal ala nafsihi bi'tibarain. You are comparing, because obviously you have the mufaddal and the mufaddal alay. So if I say, for example, الزمزم ماء زمزم أحسن من العصير. The water of Zamzam is better than Asir. Ma'u Zamzam is the mufaddal. You are giving virtue of the Ma'u Zamzam on the mufaddal alay, the thing over which you are giving virtue, which is the juice. So you have an ism, which is in example, this one. You say mufaddal ala nafsihi. This is the mufaddal ala nafsihi. Mufaddal ala nafsihi. You're giving it virtue over itself. But not just, I can't say Zamzam is better than Zamzam, because that doesn't make sense. Bi'tibarain, in two ways, two comparisons, two different aspects. Bi'tibarain, according to two different aspects. Yes, according to two different aspects. So, in this sin, if these conditions are met, these 1, 2, 3, 4 conditions are met, then we are allowed to have ism tafdil, and it can have a fa'il which is a zahir. Apart from that, basically never can you have it as like this. Only this one masala. So what's happening here? We say, I have never seen a man. I have not seen a man. So, fi aynihi, in whose eyes, kuhl, meaning surma, what we call surma, I don't know the English name for it. Surma, that black, you get that black little thing you put in the eyes, like a powder. So the kuhl looks better than it in the ayn of Zayd. So basically, we're comparing kuhl. What are we comparing? Kuhlun. What are we comparing it to? Kuhlun. But we're comparing the kuhl in the ayn, in aynihi or aynur rajul, to the kuhl in ayni Zayd. In ayni Zayd. So we're comparing the kuhl in aynur rajul to the kuhl in ayni Zayd. So mufaddal ala nafsihi bi'tibarain. We're comparing the kuhl to itself, two aspects, when it is in Zayd's eyes and when it is in a normal person's eyes. So we're saying here, I have never seen a person in whose eyes the surma looks better than it looks in Zayd's eyes. Meaning when Zayd wears a surma, that's an Urdu word, I don't know the English word for it, that black powder in his eyes, at the bottom of his eyes, he rubs it on, nobody looks better than him. Okay, so this is the mas'ala. We have al-kuhl, which is mufaddal ala nafsihi, and it is the fa'il of the ahsan, which is a sifa, it's ism tafdhil, and a sifa of a ism jins, which comes after a negative. So in this scenario, we are allowed to have this. So basically, they found one scenario, they've never seen it throughout the Kalam al-Arab, they found one scenario, so they say, well, like how we say in usul al-fiqh, if you have something that's khilafun al-qiyas, you keep it as it is. You don't say, well, we don't understand why it works, but they have spoken like this, the rule is like this in the Sharia, so we don't try to deduce based on this, because we don't understand the reason behind of this. So even here, we don't understand how kuhl becomes a file of ahsan. So how we've seen it being used in the Arab with all of these conditions, we will keep these conditions and say only in this way you can use it, as having the fa'il zahir. But basically, the general rule of thumb is the ism tafdhil never has its fa'il as a ism mudhar. It's always ism mudhmar dhamir. Except in this one mas'ala, where you have one thing being compared to itself, bi'tibarain, provided it comes the fa'il of ahsan, of a ism tafdhil, which is a not of an ism jins. And that is preceded by a negative. In this condition, you have the ability to make the kuhl, the fa'il, of ism tafdhil. So a zahir can become the fa'il ism tafdhil. Other than that, it doesn't occur. Understood? Yes? Do you understand the mas'ala? I can make one up, but they call it mas'alatul kuhl. Like the mas'ala is not mas'alatul kuhl because it's just one poem or one structure. So we can make our own example. We can say, for example, ma sami'tu, right? So that's ma, negative. Sami'tu, I heard. Ma sami'tu rajulan. Ma sami'tu rajul. I have never heard a person. Ahsana. Ahsana. Yeah, you can say that. Ahsanu. Yeah. Rajulun afsahu. 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 Yeah. 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 Ahla. Fi kalamihi ash-shi'ru. I have never seen a man in which poetry is more sweeter in his speech minhu than the poetry fi kalami Bakrin. Yes? But again, you don't have many examples of that. It's just basically on the same structure, changing the words, because the whole essence is a one-off mas'ala. And they just done qiyas and just kept it there. So again, what happens here? You have a negative, you have an ismul jins being described by ismul tafdhil, and then you have fi kalami ash-shi'r, it becomes the fa'il, that becomes the fa'il, and then is mufaddal ala nafsihi bi'tibarain, ahla fi kalamihi wa ahla fi kalami bakrin. Yes? Do you understand?
Find these words using interchangeably as well.
So in theory, you wouldn't get this one mas'ala. So just understand what this mas'ala is and the rules regarding this. It's not something you would see in literature or it's a thing you have to study in nahwa, theory, but practically I don't think you would, if you come across it apart from this mas'alatul qahl, you would be lucky. Books of nahwa don't have any other examples of practical usage. It's basically just what we just done, change the example, change the vocabulary. Have you understood? Yes? Any other questions before we conclude?
It means one type of wealth or something of value you exchange with something else which has value, but there has to be a condition. There has to be barati.
6. And in the second person?
Mm-hmm.
You can't force someone.
Yep.
And the first
That's
person?
what faith means.
2. Not 4?
There has to be this consent.
Then in the third person and second person, they split.
We're going to study.
What does the
Okay, so the question is, in the Quran, what do we have? What's the word? Inna nashi'ata al-layli hiya ashaddu wat'a. I'm not sure I spelled it correctly. I'm not sure what spelling. So here, ashaddu wat'a. So the question is it why is it not matching?
Yes or no?
Correct? So here,
You said yes, brother.
why do you think not? Here ashaddu what? Can it be mudaf?
They can interchange, but majority of them.
Yes, because it's mutafdil, yes? So how many ways can it be used? It has to be one of those 3 ways, yes?
There's no gender. Okay. So
It's either going to be mudaf,
these show family.
mu'arrafun bil lam,
They show in themselves.
and you have min. Can you have the mudaf ilay mahzuf?
In itself, if you were just to read the word on a piece of paper,
You can't have mudaf ilay mahzuf. You don't get that. So it's not mudaf. Is it mu'arraf bil lam? You can't have alif lam mahzuf. What can you have mahzuf? Min. So when you say, for example, Allahu Akbaru, it literally means what? Allahu Akbaru min kulli shay. So you say Allahu Akbar, it means min kulli shay. But because when you leave it mutlaqan, you know, okay, it means everything. Zaydun aqwa, ay min kullin. If I say aqwa minni, it means stronger than me. I'm not talking about others. So when you don't have the min after this mutafdil, it refers to a general concept that he is stronger than everyone. So here, ashaddu wat'an min, and then you have, from the context, you can deduce something. And we've understood that. Yes? So because it's min, then you have to have it as mufradan, mudhakkar.
he did something. So in the past, he did.
Down here,
Yes? Make sense?
Fa'ala.
Good question.
this has to take place. Remember, I mentioned one of the conditions which is
Tamyiz, correct.
Remember,
Here, ashaddu wat'an wa aqwamu qila. So aqwamu is again also, it's a khabar of aqwam. So here, aqwam, ashaddu wat'an wa aqwamu. So even this is mudhakkar because you have to have a min understood from the context in mahdhuf. And the qila and the wat'a is tamyiz. He says here, then you bring a tamyiz after it. ثم يذكر بعد ذلك مصدر ذلك الفعل منصوبا على التمييز. Okay? Any other questions?
he's a male.
Okay, we stop here inshallah. So if you go back to the beginning, we'll see we've completed the entire section, the khatima. So we have, throughout the book we have, Al-Qism al-Awwal is ism. Al-Qism al-Awwal is now complete. That had a muqaddimah and 3 maqasid. Muqaddimah, we had some preliminaries. Then we did all the marfu'at, we did the mansubat, we did the majrurat. Then after that we did the tawabi'. And then we done those things in this section which are not related to i'rab, ma'rifah, nakira, numbers, mudhakkar, muannas, muthanna, jumu'. We done all of these. So now the discussion of ism is complete. The next section now, al-qism al-thani, is in fa'il. He discussed fa'il madhi, mudari, amr, af'al al-qulub, etc. Okay? So we finish here inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.